Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant David Berke of the United States Marine Corps.
No cards for pussies.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks, Dan. I feel like I'm Monday Night Football. That was a good introduction. I appreciate that. That last picture wasn't really me, though. That was. Truthfully, my goal here is to not be here very long up at the podium. And that's really the reason why. I spent a lot of time in the last month thinking about what I wanted to say. I wrote a couple different speeches, and I just decided that nobody really wants to hear a speech. No offense to all the people that gave the speech when I was in your position too many years ago, but they're always boring, every single time. No offense, Major Lee. The worst part about people get up here and speak, say, you know, I always hated being in the audience listening to speakers, and they'd get up here and say, I promise I'm going to keep this short and I'll keep it interesting, but they never would. So I'm going to make that promise, and if I don't, I promise to buy anybody who didn't like this 5 minutes of my time, your time, I'll buy them a Coke afterwards. My Catherine's paying for the whole trip up here, so it's okay. Okay. I had a couple things I wanted to say tonight, but I'm not going to tell any stories. I'm not going to tell you about what I did in the past. I'm not going to tell you about my life as a fighter pilot. I'm just going to talk to you about what I got out of CAP, and I have a couple major points that I want to hit, and then I'll be done. But I think they're pretty important. They were important to me at the time, although truthfully I didn't really understand exactly what it was that was important. I've been in Civil Air Patrol, and I've been a Marine for a combined 9 years. And I think that's a long time to have a military background. By the time I was a basic cadet in encampment, I was being told to do things. I was being told to drill. I was being told to memorize things, how to do a right face, how to put on your epaulets, how to put on your cutouts. And every time I did it the first time, somebody told me I was doing it wrong. And literally, since the time I was 16 years old and joined CAP, till on Friday when I was flying in an F-18, I'm being told what I'm doing is wrong. And I'm being corrected, and after a while it gets kind of frustrating, and I think you all can appreciate that. Hey, you know, if my cutouts are 9/10 of an inch instead of an inch, I don't see what the real big deal is. And as a basic cadet, I remember being reprimanded on a regular basis for things I wasn't doing exactly right, although to me it looked pretty good. And being told to do it right is something that has always been preached to me. And then I became a staff member and kind of went to activities as a higher ranking NCO or an officer, and I began to tell people what to do, and I began to tell them to do it right. And then I thought I figured it out. I thought I had it licked on what was important, why you needed to tell people what to do, and why you needed to make them to do it the right way, because I thought it was important to drill. I thought it was important to be able to drill. I thought it was important to wear a uniform well and look good doing it. I thought it was important to be a good public speaker. I thought a lot of things were important. So as a staff member, I tried to convince the cadets that were working for me that when I was told to do it, it was a good reason for it, and I thought I had it figured out. Well, the truth of the matter is, I didn't really know why it was so important. I didn't really understand why drill and ceremonies was that big of a deal and to do it picture perfect every time. But I thought I did. Fortunately, I'm one of the very few lucky individuals that I can place to the day and to the time and to the exact instant when every single thing I learned as a cadet in Civil Air Patrol came into focus. I can literally place it at one specific second in my life. And the irony is it came about 6 months ago. And the best part about it is I have that on video. I actually have a picture that I'm going to show every single one of you right now, is when the things that I learned in Civil Air Patrol 9 years ago actually finally made picture perfect sense. And I want you all to watch it right now. I mean, you're going to see exactly when it was. Don't worry if you can't see it. It's going to come into focus here in about 30 seconds.
Watch
That was April 16th at about 13:30 off the coast of Beaufort, South Carolina. And that was my very first pass on the USS Eisenhower. I rolled into the groove at 3/4 mile and about 300 feet, and I looked out just to the left of the runway. And any of you know about naval aviation, there's a thing called a meatball. Maverick called it in Top Gun, and I called it there on video. And at that precise instant in my life, every facing movement, every drill and ceremonies definition, every cutout I ever placed on a uniform, every time my captain yelled at me, every single time those things happened, instantly, at that moment in time, came into the most picture-perfect focus of any experience in my life. Because I knew that if I didn't have it exactly 1 inch and centered, I knew if I didn't do it exactly the right way, I didn't have anywhere to go. If I was 9 feet low, and we're talking about a jet that's 45 feet long and a runway that's 100 feet wide, if I was 9 feet low, I was going to fly into the back of that carrier. And I really didn't want to do that. And if I was 9 feet high, I was going to miss the number 4 wire, and I was going to have to do that again. And I really didn't want to do that. Civil Air Patrol doesn't teach you how to wear the uniform. And Civil Air Patrol doesn't teach you how to march. It doesn't teach you any of those things. It just uses those as tools to teach you to do anything you want to do. Civil Air Patrol taught me how to land an F-18 on an aircraft carrier. And if you think I'm kidding, or if you don't believe me, get out there and do it. Because that's what I did. The sad part about it is that I didn't know that when I was a cadet. Boy, if I did, I can't imagine what I'd be doing right now. I could do anything. The bottom line is this. You saw some pictures of me up there in a video that my mom sent. The first picture you saw of me in Civil Air Patrol was a long-haired, skinny little runt in a CAP uniform with 2 CAP cutouts and not a single grade to my name. 6 years later, that guy took a Hornet and flew it around El Toro and got paid for it. And I think that's pretty cool, truthfully, because I wouldn't be doing that today if I hadn't joined CAP 6 years ago, or 6 years earlier. I wouldn't. And the truth of the matter is every single one of you is that skinny little long-haired runt too. Every one of you, even the girls. Every one of you is that skinny little kid who didn't know how to wear his uniform, who didn't know how to do a facing movement, and didn't know how to put on his cutouts. And every single one of you could be standing at this podium in 6 years telling people in your shoes that they could do the exact same thing. There is nothing special about me. There is nothing special about what I do. There's nothing special about my job. Nothing. The fact of the matter is that I could point to every single person in this room, and they have the physical ability to do it. It only depends on one thing, is if that focus ever comes in. If you ever walk through life and one day something stirs you so intensely that everything you learned actually makes sense. And that's the big irony. Everything you learned, that has the connotation that it made sense. Well, it really doesn't until some great event. I'm pretty thankful that it was on a carrier. Well, that's kind of cool. I'm not upset that that's when it happened. But it may happen to you in college. It may happen to you in a chemistry class. It may happen to you on a downhill skiing event. It may happen anywhere. There isn't a single person in this room who isn't capable of doing it. And Civil Air Patrol will teach you that. You may think right now what you're doing is marching. You may think right now what you're doing is measuring folds on a bed. But you're not. You're learning how to be a human being, and you're learning how to be a success. You're learning how to be a fighter pilot, a skier, an astronaut, a police officer, a teacher. You're learning how to do every single one of the things right now. That's what Civil Air Patrol was for me, and that's what it can and should be for every single one of you. You don't need to shoot down F-15s for fun to be a success. You don't need to embarrass F-16 pilots because they think they're good dogfighters for fun to be a success. And you don't need to get waxed by your F-18 instructor buddies every day to have fun to be a success. You can be a success at anything you do. And right now, every single one of you possesses the ability and the skill to do that. And you owe that to this program, as I do. Civil Air Patrol made me an F-18 pilot, and it made me a successful human being. And it can do the same for every one of you.